My name is Gabriela Miller. I am 45 years old now. 19 years ago, I was a young woman from a simple town in Iowa. I brought humble dreams into a marriage. I believed this man was the love of my life. His name was Mason. He was 2 years older than me. He was a former college classmate. He always knew how to make me laugh. He made me feel loved. That was true, at least for the first few years, back then. I had little but a college degree in education, and my heart was full of hope. We moved to a small town in Oregon. Mason got a job at a construction company there. I became a full time homemaker. It wasn't because I did not want to work, it was because Mason once held my hand. He said, I want you to stay home. Take care of our home. I will handle everything else. I believed him completely. I believed him enough to give up the teaching career. I had dreamed of since I was 15. I did this just to build a family life. I thought it would make me happy. In the early years, Mason was a wonderful husband. He brought flowers home every weekend. He often hugged me from behind while I was cooking. He whispered sweet words like, I am so lucky to have you. I remember those crisp autumn afternoons clearly. We picked apples in the backyard. We laughed and played like two kids. But then, somehow, Mason's smile began to disappear. He started coming home late. He talked less. The kindness in his eyes faded away. I used to tell myself it was just stress from work. But after 5 years, that change felt lasting. It became a part of who he was. I remember one time, dinner was late because the oven broke. Mason slammed his keys on the table. He said coldly, You cannot even cook dinner. What do you do all day long? I stood frozen in the kitchen. I still held the burnt cake spatula. That sentence felt like a harsh hit to the respect I had held onto for years. From then on, the sharp comments and the looks of disapproval became normal. He stopped asking if I was tired. He stopped caring about the meals I worked hard to prepare. Mason began comparing me to other women. He talked about his beautiful and successful coworkers. Why do you not learn something from other wives? He once said during a fight. This was when I simply asked him to come home earlier for dinner. We never had children. I used to think it was something to regret, but over time I started to see it as a good thing. I did not want a child growing up in a home where love had become very little. Every morning I woke up early to make breakfast. I did laundry, I cleaned every part of the house. A 3 bedroom home, Mason said, was too big for a woman who does not earn any money. I did not respond. I had learned to keep quiet, because every time I spoke up, all I got was a cold stare and a feeling of being completely unimportant. I used to think if I tried hard enough, he would go back to being the man he used to be. But the harder I tried, the smaller I felt in the very home I worked so hard to build. I lived like a ghost in our marriage, always asking myself where I made a mistake. Was it because I did not make money, or because I was no longer the young woman he married? Then one day, while I was scrubbing the floors, Mason walked past me without looking. He muttered, If you cannot do anything else, at least clean the floor properly. I gripped the mop handle tightly. My chest felt tight. I did not cry. I did not react. But something inside me changed. A small idea of what was happening started to grow. And I knew one day that idea would turn into a choice Mason would never see coming. After that moment, I started watching him more closely. I stopped just quietly dealing with things. Instead of trying to please a man who had become distant, I silently paid attention to every small sign. The way he smiled at his phone, the nights he said he had to work late, but came home smelling of strange cologne, and the charges on our bank statements that had no clear reason. Mason used to be ambitious, at least in the early years. He worked for a small construction company in Eugene, Oregon, where we lived. He often bragged about becoming a manager soon, but that promise stayed just a promise. After 5 years, Mason quit because he did not fit the company's way of doing things. Then a year later, he quit again. He said his boss was too old fashioned. Finally, I stopped asking why he quit. Every time he came home with that cold look and the words, I quit, I just pressed my lips together. I quietly changed how we spent money in the house. There was a time we had to sell our old car. This was to pay off debt from credit cards. I started eating less or cheaper food. I replaced steak with lentil soup and toast. I tried to make sure Mason did not feel stressed about money. I even taught kids in the neighborhood in the evenings. This was to make a little extra money. But it was never enough to cover the months he was not working. He never asked if I was tired. He never knew that I sometimes slept on the sofa. This was because I did not have the energy to go up the stairs. Then last summer, Mason got a new job at a local real estate office. The pay was not high, but he could earn extra money if he sold properties. He seemed different. He dressed more sharply. He started wearing cologne. He once said it was not needed. He even bought an expensive watch. He said it was to impress clients. I did not question it, because deep down, I still had hope. Hope that this was his chance to grow up and finally value our marriage. But instead of coming home for dinner, Mason started being gone more often. Some nights he said he had to meet a client late. Other times it was an event for work connections. I quietly made my own dinner plate. I sat by the window looking out at the empty street. I listened to the clock ticking. It was counting down the days of a marriage that was falling apart. One night, while arranging flowers in the living room, this was one of the few things that gave me peace. Mason came home late. He looked excited. As he took off his shoes, he said, I closed a deal with a possible client named Ava. She is a big investor. She is probably coming back. When I asked, Who is Ava? Mason just waved it off. He said, Just a client. Don't think too much about it. But I could not stop thinking about it. Because that night, while picking up the clothes Mason left on the chair, I found a receipt from a fancy restaurant in the city center. It was a place we had never gone to together because it was too expensive. I started looking into things, not in a dramatic way like in movies, but with the quiet patience of someone who had become used to observing in silence. I kept track of receipts, his times away, even the moment he changed his phone password without telling me. I did not tell anyone, not even my sister in Seattle. I felt ashamed, as if the problems in my marriage were all my fault. One night I woke up and heard Mason laughing softly while texting. The light from his phone screen lit up his face. It was a face that no longer looked like the man I once loved. It looked like a stranger, cold, secretive, living a life I was no longer part of. I wondered if men, when they do not feel successful in their work, try to hold on to something else to feel important again. When Mason was no longer the main provider, did he need someone else to want him to feel worthy? Whatever the reason, I was too tired to keep making excuses for him. Love should not make someone feel unimportant every single day. That night, I opened the drawer. I took out a folder I had prepared a long time ago. It was something Mason never knew about. I looked at the printed pages. My heart felt heavy, but it was no longer shaking like before. The divorce papers were still blank. They had no date, but I knew that the moment I picked up the pen to sign them, it would be the moment I chose myself again. I put the folder into a hidden pocket of my handbag. Mason never looked there. To others, it might have just been a few simple papers, but to me, they were a shield. The one thing that made me feel like I still had some control in a life that had become so unfamiliar. I had not signed yet. I did not plan to file them right away, but knowing I could, at any time, helped me sleep through those long nights Mason did not come home. I thought my life would keep going in that unclear state of doubt and waiting, until a phone call from my mother changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had just made some tea when the phone rang. The screen showed Mom, just like always. Her voice came through the phone. It was still warm, but today it had something else. Excitement, a hint of strong feeling. Gabby, she called me by the nickname from when I was a child. Do you remember the forest land up north that Grandma left you? I paused for a moment. Yes, I remember. The one with the old wooden cabin, right? That's right, my mother replied. Then she stopped for a moment. She gave you the ownership papers when you were 30. She did it because she believed you were the only one in the family who truly understood what is important. I sat down in the chair. My heart was beating fast. I remembered those summers as a child there, the sound of birds in the trees, the smell of wild grass and Grandma's cornbread. But I never thought it would become something this important. My mom continued. Her voice was lower now. Last week, I hired someone to check the value of the whole property, the part by the lake and the part on the mountainside. Gabby, you won't believe it. The land is now worth almost $7 million. My mouth dropped open. You said how much? 7 million, maybe more if you sell it at the best time of year. And if you include the small house in the city Grandma bought under your name when you finished college, you have almost $9 million in property. I sat there, still holding the teapot. It was getting cold. My mind was spinning. Mason did not know about this. I had forgotten about it myself. I never thought I would need it. I had loved Mason so much. I was willing to lower my own worth just to keep him. My mom gently added, I do not trust Mason. I never have, but I trust you. And you should know, everything is in your name. No one can touch it, unless you say they can. I thanked her, then sat quietly for a long time after the call ended. Her words echoed in my mind like a bell waking me up. I had lived all these years thinking I had nothing, no job, no value, no future. But it turns out I had everything, and I had simply forgotten who I was. That night, when Mason got home, he threw his jacket on the chair. He said casually, I am going on a work trip to Bend for 2 days. Don't call. I might not answer. I just nodded. I hid a faint smile behind my half finished cup of tea. It had been a long time since I felt this calm looking at Mason. I no longer trembled when he acted annoyed. I no longer felt empty when he left without a kind word. After he went upstairs, I opened my laptop. I started looking up Oregon divorce laws, how to value assets, and top lawyers in the area. I was not going to tell Mason just yet. But step by step, I had started getting ready. I also called an old friend, Amelia. She was a lawyer for family cases. I went to college with her. We had not stayed very close, but she had always been honest. After listening to everything, Amelia stopped for a moment, then said softly, Gabby, if you need someone to represent you, I am here. And don't feel bad for protecting yourself. I thanked her. I gently closed the laptop. Outside the window, a light rain had started. The drops hit the glass like the beat of a new hope. I knew Mason still believed I could never leave him. He thought I would always be the woman who needed her husband. But he did not know that now. I had everything I needed to start over, a lot of money he did not know about, a will that was stronger than ever, and a plan that was slowly coming to life. That morning, the sky in Oregon was gray, as if showing something bad was coming. I got up earlier than usual. I went to the farmer's market. This was the one thing each week that made me feel free, even if it was just picking out some green vegetables or fresh apples. But maybe fate was waiting for me at the last turn on Riverview Road. The truck in front of me suddenly stopped quickly. I quickly turned my car to the right. But I could not turn in time. The sound of metal hitting metal rang out loudly. Everything around me turned upside down. I do not remember much after that, only that I woke up under bright white lights. I was in a hospital room. It smelled strongly of cleaning products. I am Dr. Renner, said a calm voiced man who looked about my age. As I slowly opened my eyes, Miss Gabriella, you have broken ribs and a neck sprain. Luckily, there is no brain damage, but you will need to stay in the hospital for at least a week. This is to watch you. I tried to nod, but the pain in my neck was so sharp I could not move. The only thing I could feel was emptiness and being alone. Mason did not show up that day. He did not even call. I lay still in bed. I listened to the sounds of carts rolling, nurses talking over the speakers, and I waited. I was not sure what I was waiting for. A call, a text message, or at least some sign that he still thought about me. It was not until the second day that Mason finally showed up. But he was not alone. I heard the sound of high heels clicking steadily down the hallway before the door opened. Mason walked in. He looked completely unaffected, as if he was just stopping by to see someone he knew. The woman beside him, she looked around 30. She was tall, she had soft curly blonde hair, and a tight blue dress. She showed a bright smile when she saw me. Gabriella, Mason said without stopping, we need to talk. I turned my head toward him with difficulty. I tried to stay calm even as my stomach felt sick. The woman did not wait to be asked to come in. She walked up beside my bed very easily, as if she belonged there. I am Tessa, she said. Her voice was light but full of acting better than others. I am sure Mason has told you about me. I looked at Mason. He did not say no. He did not step back. He did not say sorry. Tessa and I, we are together now, Mason said slowly, as if explaining something very clear. This will be best for all three of us. You do not need to worry. Tessa will take care of me. I let out a dry, broken laugh. Did you just say, best for me? Gabby, Mason sighed, as if I was the one causing problems. You should let go. I think we should get a divorce. You know we have not had anything good for a long time. Tessa stepped back. She folded her arms. Her eyes looked over my IV lines, as if she was judging something ready to be thrown away. I did not say a word. Instead, I reached. my hands shaking slightly but strong, for the bedside drawer, and I took out a thin, light brown folder. Inside was a printed divorce form. It had both our full names, only missing the date and our signs. I placed it on the small table next to the bed. I looked him straight in the eye. I have had this ready for a while. Mason, I was just waiting for a clear reason. He froze. For a moment, his face looked unsure, but then it went back to his usual smug look. Good, I will sign it. Tessa smiled faintly. Looks like you are reasonable after all. I did not respond. Inside, I no longer felt the pain I used to. This was true during those early days of his coldness. What I felt now was something strangely peaceful, like I had finally let go of a quiet burden. It had worn me down for almost 20 years before they left the room. Mason turned back, he said, as if it was something he had to say. I hope you will be okay, even without me. I smiled slightly. There was no anger, no feeling of being wronged, just the kind of smile someone wears when they know they are about to take back their freedom. As the door closed behind them, I closed my eyes. One part of my life had ended, and I knew the next part was about to start. Not just with the divorce, but with a truth Mason had no idea about. I was never as empty handed as he believed. I was allowed to leave the hospital on a Monday morning. The grass was still wet with dew. The April wind moved the tree branches outside the hospital. The first thing I saw when I turned on my phone was a message from Amelia, my lawyer. She had messaged the day before. Mason just filed for divorce. But don't worry, I handled it exactly as planned. I smiled. It was a rare smile. After so many difficult months, a week before the accident, Amelia and I had quietly filed a request to stop any divorce filing by just one person at the county court. It was a safety step in case Mason tried to run away without splitting money and property. At the time, I was not sure if I would need it, but now, it turns out my feelings about things had never been wrong. At 3 p.m., my phone would not stop ringing. I saw who was calling Mason. I waited until the fifth call to answer. Gabby, where are you? Why was the divorce filing denied? He spoke in a sharp voice. Not one word of concern, not even a question about my health after leaving the hospital. I held the phone slightly away from my ear, as if his tension might come through the screen. Oh, that, I replied calmly. You must have forgotten. Every time we argued in the past, you always said you would divorce me. I just wanted to make sure that if you ever actually filed, I would be ready. Ready for what? Are you kidding me? Mason almost shouted. I kept my voice steady on purpose. I think it is best we work through our lawyers, shared property, separate property, dividing things. Just follow the law. There was silence on the other end. Then Mason spoke again. His voice was no longer harsh, but it had a hint of worry. Gabby, what assets? You do not have anything to split. I laughed. Not because I was happy, but because I knew exactly. The man behind the voice still believed I was just a housewife with no money, no job, and no power. Nothing, I said slowly. Mason, I think you should speak to my attorney, because there is a lot you do not know yet. I heard a chair make a noise, followed by a long, tense sigh from him. Don't make this complicated, Gabriella, Mason said, changing to a more convincing tone. I just want to get this over with so I can move on. With Tessa, I asked, not trying to hide how I felt. He did not answer. I continued, if you are in such a hurry, that is too bad. Because until the money and property division is finished, your divorce filing will not go through. And I heard Oregon rules say all money matters must be settled before a new marriage can be official, right? A heavy breath came through the phone line. I knew he was more desperate than ever. He did not just want to end things with me. He wanted to make things certain with Tessa, the woman he believed would make his life easier. But what he did not expect was that I am not the Gabriella he used to know. I will talk to your lawyer, Mason said quickly, as if trying to end the call. One more thing. I cut in before he could hang up. You should know, I currently own over $8 million in property and money I received, just in my name. And under the law, any separate property gained before marriage or given directly is not divided. But if you want to fight it, be my guest. The call ended in silence, a silence as heavy as stone. I stood by the window of the small apartment I was renting for a short time. This was after leaving the hospital. My eyes were closed. I enjoyed the feeling of being free in a new way. For the first time in 19 years, I was not afraid of anything. Not of being left behind, not of being judged, and especially not of a man who had thought I was not worth much. That evening, Amelia sent me a detailed plan. What property to list, which papers to get ready, which legal steps to take first. We are going to make it so hard for him. He won't know what hit him, she messaged, adding a smiling face. I looked at the screen and smiled. I did not need to get back at him because I was angry. I only needed the truth. And the truth is, the man who once looked down on me is now dealing with the results of his own mistakes. Mason may have thought he won when he left me in the hospital to find a new love. The next morning, my phone started ringing constantly at 8 a.m. I knew right away it was Mason. He called 12 times, then started sending many text messages, each one just seconds apart. Did you lock the account? I cannot take out money. What did you do with my card? Gabriella, answer me. I let out a long breath. Every word on the screen only made me more sure I was right to tell the bank to stop him from taking money from our shared account while I was in the hospital. Before I left the hospital, I had asked to fully separate the accounts and cancel his extra card. Mason was not told because everything was under my name. At the time, it felt like being careful, but now his reaction showed. He did not just want to end the marriage, he wanted to take what was not his. The doorbell rang at 10 a.m. I opened the door and almost could not speak at the sight of the woman standing in front of me. Oh my God, Gabby, you look so thin, she said. Then she hugged me. Ali, I stepped back in surprise. You really flew in from Denver. Allison, my best friend from college, who I once thought of as a sister, stepped into the apartment. She had a gift bag and that familiar flower smell she wore. We had lived together in the dorms and stayed in touch for over 20 years, even after living in different places. When she heard about my accident, Ali immediately took 3 days off work and flew in. Are you sure you are okay? She asked as I poured us tea. I nodded, then I breathed out. Better than ever. But there is something you should know. I told Ali everything about Mason, Tessa, the divorce papers, and the money and property Mason had no idea existed. She listened carefully, never stopping me, only nodding sometimes. When I got to the part about Mason trying to take money from my personal account and getting upset when he could not, Ali put her teacup down hard. That is why you need a lawyer, she said. Her voice was sharp. Mason is not just not thankful, he is greedy. But wait, Tessa. I made a questioning look. What about her? Tessa Donnelly. Yes, why? Ali looked closely and took out her phone. After a few taps, she showed me a picture. It was a family event. Tessa was standing beside an older woman I did not know. That is Tessa's aunt, Ali said. I know her from a women's real estate investment group in Denver. She used to complain about her niece. She spends money like crazy, always dating older men to get ahead in life. I sat up straight. Are you saying Tessa went after Mason because she thought he was rich? Absolutely. And I remember her aunt saying that girl once pretended to be pregnant to trick a doctor into marrying her. It did not work, but she was never ashamed of anything. I was speechless. Suddenly, all the puzzle pieces in my mind fit together. Mason's many times away for client meetings, the receipts from expensive restaurants, and his strange hurry to finish the divorce. I tapped the table lightly. Do you still have contact with Tessa's aunt? Yes. What are you planning? I looked at Ali. I was calm but determined. Start gathering proof. If Mason thinks he can secretly give money to Tessa, or hide the fact that she lied about being pregnant, then he clearly does not know who he is dealing with. That very afternoon, Ali and I met with my lawyer, Amelia. After hearing the story, Amelia smiled slightly. If what Ali says is true, we can make this case bigger, to include financial abuse and fraud. Tessa is not walking away clean, Ali added. I can set up a meeting with Tessa's aunt this week. I think she will help if she knows her niece is about to ruin another person's life. I nodded. Good. I do not want this to last a long time, but I am not walking into any traps either. That night, I received a text message from Mason. Tessa might be in some trouble. Can you stop the filing? We can talk it over like grown-ups. I looked at the message. I was not even tempted to answer. There was no regret left in me, only clear thinking. The game Mason and Tessa started was no longer in their hands. The meeting took place on a Friday morning at a private restaurant on the top floor of a small fancy hotel in Portland. I had asked Amelia to pick the place for its privacy and formal feel, the kind of place I knew would stop Mason and Tessa from acting out. When I entered the private meeting room, they were already sitting across from each other at a long wooden table. Tessa was made up as usual, but there was a hint of worry in her eyes this time. Mason avoided looking at me. He was nervously playing with his water glass. Amelia sat next to me. She put down her work bag and looked directly at them. Thank you for coming. Today, we are here to talk about dividing the money and property and problems from the divorce process between my client Gabriella Miller and Mr. Mason Miller. Tessa scoffed and leaned toward Mason. She whispered, I thought you said this would be easy. I tilted my head and gave a polite smile. It will be easy. We are starting with the truth. As soon as I finished speaking, the door opened again. Allie walked in carrying a large envelope. She was followed by an older woman I knew, Miss Marianne Donnelly, Tessa's aunt. Tessa immediately jumped up. Her voice was scared. Aunt, what are you doing here? Mrs. Marianne took a seat on my side of the table. She put the envelope down. You know exactly what you have done. But if you are going to turn someone else's life into your personal plan to get money, I cannot stay quiet anymore. I nodded to show thanks. Then I signaled Amelia. She opened the envelope and pulled out a series of clear photos. Tessa entering a hotel holding hands with another man, not Mason. Some pictures were taken in the daytime, others at night. More photos showed Tessa at a bar, sitting close to a group of men dressed smartly, laughing and flirting. Mason looked clearly pale. He turned to Tessa, his eyes wide. Tessa, what is this? Tessa stepped back, her voice trembling. They are just friends. Friends, Ali cut in. In 1 week, where she said she was on a work trip, I counted at least 3 dates with 3 different men. And according to her aunt, this is not the first time Tessa has done something like this. Amelia presented another paper, a statement from Mrs. Marianne. It confirmed that Tessa had once tried to trick a doctor into marriage by pretending to be pregnant. I crossed my arms and looked straight at Mason. And you still plan to marry her? That was fast, considering you are not even divorced yet. Mason clenched his fists. He said nothing. Tessa looked like she could barely stand. Her eyes were darting between me, Allie, and her aunt, finally. She fell into her chair. She mumbled, I am sorry. I am not pregnant. I needed someone who could take care of me. I am tired of struggling. I did not want to work my whole life just to barely get by. You plan to live by tricking others? Amelia asked. Her voice was full of sharp comments. No, it is just I thought Mason had money. I thought he would give me an easier life. Mason looked at Tessa with a strong dislike I had never seen before. Maybe, for the first time, he realized he had walked right into a trap that looked shiny. Regarding the assets, Amelia said, turning the talk back to the main point. My client has prepared full papers showing that the properties she received, both before and during the marriage, are in her name and are not to be divided. However, according to Oregon law, any money added together during the marriage will be looked at in court. We are willing to work with the other party if they act honestly, I added calmly. But if there is continued avoidance, wrong use of shared accounts, or any try to plan to steal assets, I will have no choice but to start both civil and criminal investigations. The room became quiet for a few moments. Then Mason lowered his head, for the first time in all of this. I will sign everything. I am sorry, Gabby. I was wrong. I did not respond, because at this point, saying sorry meant nothing. What I needed was a clear end, with nothing hidden, and a new beginning, where I was in control. Tessa was taken out by her aunt. Mason signed each paper like a machine. When the meeting ended, Amelia leaned toward me and said softly, The goal is finished. Gabriella, now it is time to start again. A week after that important meeting, Mason showed up at the door of my temporary apartment without calling first. He stood there in a wrinkled suit. His hair was messy. His eyes looked tired from not sleeping. In his hand was a bunch of yellow flowers. The kind I used to like 15 years ago, when we were still dating. Gabby, he started. His voice was rough. I have done a lot of thinking. I know I was wrong. Tessa, she used me. But you were always there for me, always good to me. Can we start over? I stayed silent. I did not step outside the doorway. Things could go back to how they were. Mason continued. I realize I cannot live without you. I looked at him, for the first time, with no love, no pain, just complete clear thinking. Back to how they were, I repeated with a small laugh. You mean the days I was bent over the stove, while you were out to dinner with another woman? Or the nights I slept alone, while you were texting someone else? It was not like that, Mason said quickly. I was tricked. She lied to me about everything. I nodded. And now you expect me to save you from the results you created? I stepped back and closed the door between us, leaving only a small gap. You forgot one thing, Mason. I am not your past anymore. I am Gabriella Miller, the woman with almost $9 million in personal money, a top legal team, and a life that is starting fresh. Without you, I gently closed the door. I did not cry. News of our divorce quickly spread in the local real estate area, not because of me, but because of Mason. An employee at his company showed pictures of papers. They proved he used the company's money to pay for dates with Tessa. The company started an internal check. Within 3 days, Mason was fired for breaking rules without regular pay. He had to move out of his nice apartment and go back to live with his parents in Spokane. But once his family found out he was facing a lawsuit and owed me a large payment for acting dishonestly, they said they could no longer support him. They even sent a different lawyer to ask for their names to be removed from an old loan guarantee. And Tessa, after that confrontation, her aunt contacted her mother. She was a retired teacher and told her everything. A week later, Tessa was taken out of college. All her credit cards were cut, and she was made to work at the family bakery in Idaho. According to Ali, Tessa now wakes up at 4 a.m. every day to prepare dough and deliver baked goods. Every dollar she earns is kept to pay back the amount ordered by the court. I did not feel happy about that result. I did not show that I was better than them. I just knew that in the end, fairness happened. It did not need to be loud to be real. Amelia called me Thursday afternoon. She told me all the legal steps were finished. Mason had signed the agreement to divide all shared money and property. It gave a lot more to me, and he had taken back all his claims against me. I was truly free, in the eyes of the law and in my heart. That evening, I sat alone on the balcony of my apartment. I had a glass of wine. I watched the city lights in the distance. There was no one talking beside me. No dinner to rush, no footsteps coming home heavy with tension, just me. And peace. I thought about the years that had passed, the times I did not eat enough to pay bills, the nights I could not sleep waiting for Mason to come home, the looks of being put down because I was just a housewife. Now, all of that was in the past. I had finally done something I once thought was impossible. I let go of the person who hurt me and held on to the one who never left. Myself. And that was the most valuable thing my marriage ever gave me. 2 months after the divorce was final, I left Portland. Not because I wanted to run from old memories, but because I wanted to start a completely new part of my life. In a place with no sign of Mason, no rooms that had seen my tears, and no more difficult silence between two people who used to call each other husband and wife, I chose Crescent Lake, a small town located between pine forests and Oregon's deep green mountains. It was not too far from the city, but quiet enough to hear birds singing every morning, and the wind moving through the porch roof in the afternoon. With some of the money I kept, I bought a 2-story wooden house. It was located behind maple trees. It had a wide porch and large windows that let in the sunlight. Ali was the first to move in with me. We did not live like a couple, but like two women who had gone through hard times and finally found each other in a calm place. Ali had just ended a 10-year relationship. She said it was so peaceful it became boring, she told me. I do not know exactly what I want, but I know one thing for sure. I do not want to keep living like I am waiting for someone else to show up and make me feel complete. We shared the work in the house. I cooked, Ali cleaned, I took care of the garden. She picked music and played it every morning. On sunny days, we rode bikes to the farmer's market. We bought fresh flowers, fruit, and bread made by hand from a sweet old woman named Marge. She always smiled and winked. She said, "You two are exactly the kind of independent women I admire." We made sure to travel at the end of each month. Sometimes it was just a short trip to Florence Beach. Other times it was a relaxing night at a cabin with hot springs. No strict plans, no one to report to. And certainly no sighs from someone who did not value us. I started cooking again. but this time not to please anyone. I tried out dishes I had always wanted to make, but had been told were too fancy or too expensive. Ali would often stand behind me with a glass of wine in her hand. She watched like I was performing a private show. One time she laughed and said, "I have never seen anyone fry fish while wearing a floral dress and pearl earrings like you do." I winked. "I am not frying fish. I am creating art." Over time, I realized something important. Freedom is not about how much money you have. It is about living the way you want without needing someone else's approval. Every morning when I opened my eyes, I knew I could choose what to wear, what to eat, what to do, and most importantly, who to live for. And that person, first and most important, had to be me. One evening, we sat on the porch, under blankets, sipping cinnamon tea. The early autumn breeze moved through our hair. Ali rested her head on my shoulder and asked, "Do you think if Mason had not changed 5 years ago, you would be living like this now?" I was quiet for a moment. Then I answered softly, "Probably not. I might still be cooking dinner every night, but in the kitchen of a cold house. I might still be smiling, but it would be the kind of smile that hides the feeling of being forgotten." Ali took my hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "Then maybe losing something is the best way to find yourself." I nodded. I used to be afraid of being alone. I used to think that without a man beside me, a woman somehow lacked value, but it turns out, it was in the quiet times by myself that I heard my inner voice the clearest. We decided to plant a flower garden in the backyard and build a wooden bookshelf for the small reading room by the window. I also started writing a blog. I shared recipes and my story of starting over. Not to be famous, but to tell other women that it is never too late to change their path. One October afternoon, sunlight streamed through the pine trees. It made everything look like soft gold. I sat at my desk. I was writing the last lines of a blog post called Alone But Not Lonely. I looked up and out the window. Allie was watering lavender flowers. She turned. She lifted her arm to wave at me. Her smile was as bright as the sunshine. And in that moment, I knew I had truly found home. Not a place, but a feeling, peace, wholeness, and being completely myself. From my own story, I realized that freedom and happiness do not come from holding on to a person or a marriage that is already broken. They come from having the courage to walk away, even if it means walking alone. I once believed that being a devoted wife was enough. But the truth is, a woman's worth does not come from sacrifice. It comes from self respect and the ability to take charge of her own life. Now I live with less worry than ever. I do not need anyone's permission to simply be me. What do you think of Gabriella's journey? Have you experienced something similar? Share your thoughts below. And do not forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about life and family relationships.